Good morning. Today is Friday the 30th of June. My name is Kathy and I live in the parish of Binstead. I've chosen the passage from Nehemiah to look at today. Nehemiah is the last of the Old Testament historical books. It records the history of the third return to Jerusalem after captivity, telling how the walls were rebuilt and the people were renewed in their faith. This took place in about 445 BC. Despite the fact that the returned exiles had been in Jerusalem for many years and the temple had been completed, the walls of the city remained unrepaired, leaving its people defenseless and vulnerable. In this book, as the story begins, Nehemiah was talking with fellow Jews who reported on the state of the walls and gates of Jerusalem. This was disturbing news, and rebuilding the walls became Nehemiah's burden. At the appropriate time, Nehemiah asked King Artaxerxes for permission to go to Jerusalem to rebuild its fallen walls. The king approved. So let us read chapter 1 together now, and I'm reading from the New International Version of the Bible. It's titled Nehemiah's Prayer. The words of Nehemiah son of Hakaliah. In the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanai, one of my brothers came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile, and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, "Those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been burned with fire." When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. Then I said, "Lord, the God of heaven, the great and awesome God, who keeps his covenant of love with those who love him and keep his commandments, let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant is praying before you this day and night for your servants, the people of Israel. I confess the sins we Israelites, including myself and my father's family, have committed against you. We have acted very wickedly toward you. We have not obeyed the commands, decrees, and laws you gave your servant Moses. Remember the instruction you gave your servant Moses, saying, 'If you are unfaithful, I will scatter you among the nations. But if you return to me and obey my commands, then even if your exiled people are at the farthest horizon, I will gather them from there and bring them to the place I have chosen as a dwelling for my name. They are your servants and your people, whom you redeemed by your great strength and your mighty hand. Lord, let your ear be attentive to the prayer of this your servant, and to the prayer of your servants who delight in revering your name. Give your servant success today by granting him favor in the presence of this man." I was the cupbearer to the king. That ends our reading today, and when I read a few different commentaries on this chapter, and I would like to share one of them with you this morning. It's written by Michael Ipgrave, and it comes from Reflections for Daily Prayer, which is published by Church House Publishing. Michael's focus is on the words, "this man," in verse 11, and it refers to King Artaxerxes. This is what Michael writes. This man, verses 11, in his prayer for success in the grand project he is formulating to restore Jerusalem, Nehemiah abruptly refers to his royal master, Artaxerxes, as this man. The language he uses when praying is brusque, even rude, and it is a striking contrast to the respectively honorific way in which Nehemiah addresses the king in person. To some extent, we all think of people, or we talk about them to our intimate acquaintances, in ways that are different from those which we speak of them in public or to their face. The tension is particularly acute for those who have to deal on a daily basis with persons of exalted degree, as Nehemiah clearly has to do in his office of royal cupbearer. Is he then guilty of a kind of hypocrisy saying one thing to the king's face and another behind his back. Rather than that, surely Nehemiah's abruptly concise expression, "this man," demonstrates the honesty and transparency which he engages in prayer. In the presence of God, even the most exalted king is just another human being, one who might help either to fulfill or impede the divine purpose. Praying in a stressful situation, or in a power imbalance, or in a moment of crisis, we hold our fellow men and women before God, and we realize that in the divine presence there is always a radical equality of creatures. That realization can give us confidence and can strengthen our faith, as it did Nehemiah's. I find this a good reminder that in God's eyes we're all created equal, and so not only should we treat people fairly and without bias, but also that each of us is precious and valuable. We need not feel inferior or inadequate. Ask God to give you courage and boldness in situations where you might feel you're not worthy or not in a position to contribute. With God's power and the Holy Spirit's help, you can make a difference. Thank you for joining me today. Goodbye.